It's a dark night, moonless and starless. No light, no guidance. Stumbling forward, you practically fall through the entrance to the Anselm Society Digital Pub. All around you are raucous conversations about arts and faith. You've never felt so ignorant before in your life. In a table in the far corner is a man who has no idea whatsoever what he's talking about. Luckily, 3 women at the table do know what they're talking about. It's Believed to See, a podcast of the Anselm Society Arts Guild. I'm Matt Mellema, your co-host / ignorant man who has no idea what he's talking about. And I'm joined here, it's my co-host again is my lovely wife, Danielle. Danielle, how are you?
I'm doing good. Excited to be back for another episode.
Yeah. So before we get too far into this, I want to bring up a subject that is near and dear to my heart. And since I'm going to just spout ignorance for the rest of this episode, I want to talk about something I know about first. Now, Danielle, yeah. I've been talking to you about this nonstop for the past day, but pretend you don't know what I'm talking about here. Did you know I had my very first viral tweet last night?
Tell me more.
Yeah, so I am on Twitter, and I have my little Twitter persona. Y'all should follow me, Matt Mellema, at twitter.com, whatever. I mean, do whatever. So I've been trying to get a viral tweet going for a while, and I have several hundred followers. It's respectable, not impressive. I'm sure a lot of you listeners out there have way more than me, and I've been trying. I will come up with the most. I write it like, oh, that's so clever. Like 2 likes. One of them's my father-in-law.
He is a faithful liker of your tweets. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, you are my best follower. You are always there to like my tweets. But I finally got a viral tweet. Sort of, by my standards. As of, I'm looking at it right now, 830 likes, 73 retweets, 13 comments.
Hey.
Do you want to know what the very, very deep and witty comment was?
Am I still acting like I don't know? I don't know. What is it?
So the Toronto Raptors are an NBA team, and they wore these uniforms the other night that were red and white with a little chevron on it, and I thought they looked really cool. So I tweeted to the Raptors, hey, those uniforms are really cool. You should wear them more. That's my viral tweet. There it is. That is probably my biggest contribution to the internet to date.
You did it.
I did it.
You did do it.
So yes, you're welcome, world. You're welcome, Raptors fans. If you want to follow for content such as this or other stuff, mattmellema.com, whatever. I read viral tweets just sometimes. But anyway, let's go back to the main topic where I'll admit I am totally and completely ignorant, and that is, I am so ignorant of this topic, I don't even know how to tee it up. I don't know the name of the genre. So, Danielle, maybe you should tee it up for us. What are we talking about today? Okay,
correct me, September, if I'm wrong, but the genre I've heard called Christian living and Christian inspiration. I don't know if those are separate, but in my mind, they're one. But we are discussing that today.
And now this is probably a good time to introduce the guests at the table. So the other folks at the table who fortunately know what they're talking about, we have Evangeline Denmark, friend of the show, frequent guest. Hello, Evangeline.
Hello, I'm excited to be here tonight.
Oh, good.
Yay.
And our other guest is September Grace, who is joining us remotely. And now, September, last time we did this, we lost the episode entirely. Sorry again, Ashley. But I have total confidence we'll do it this time. So September, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me and letting me figure out all this technological witchcraft to make this work.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't really trust technology. People tell me it works. I guess I believe it, but I don't know, whatever. So let's maybe have everyone explain what we're talking about and their experience with it. So Danielle, you mentioned the whole Christian living thing. So what is your experience with this?
My experience with it. Well, when I have a chance to read with 3 little ones, I do enjoy the occasional Christian living book. I feel like my tastes have changed as I have gotten older, as I've matured a bit in the faith. And I've read several good ones, even just this year, by Hannah Anderson, Sarah Haggerty, that I feel like have really, drawn me closer to the Lord. taught me new things, helped me see things in a different light. So yes, I guess a semi-frequent reader of the genre
So,
is fair.
really quick, is it Haggerty or Haggerty?
I have heard Haggerty, but I could see Haggerty.
That sounds like it's pronounced by someone with a very heavy Minnesota accent. Oh, Sarah Haggerty? Oh, she's good.
Maybe. Maybe.
Anyway, so Evangeline, let's maybe tell us a little bit about your experience with this area and, what knowledge you're bringing in. I'll tell you my experience, virtually none, because, we'll get into that later. But go ahead.
Not a loaded question at all.
Yeah, my experience with that. What does this mean?
Oh my goodness. I'll go ahead and say that I'm nervous about this because it's a really important topic to me, and kind of one that's close to home. So it's one of those things where you're like, I hope that I can articulate thoughts about this thing that is like so close to my heart that I can almost not separate it from my heartbeat. But this discussion was prompted by an article that came out that's called on LitHub. That's called The Quiet Revolution in Evangelical Christian Publishing and the Women Who Have Had Enough.
Yeah, great article.
I do have experience as a woman who has had enough. So if that qualifies me to talk at all. I have a little bit of background in Christian publishing and also have lived as a woman for
your entire life.
My entire life.
For some time now. Yes.
Let's not reveal ages. So we had a really great discussion about this, and we wanted to kind of take it to the podcast.
Yeah,
absolutely. Like I will say, this is what prompted the podcast. Brian Brown, El Capitan, posted this on our Facebook page. Had some good conversations about it. I thought it was really interesting, even coming at it as total ignorant. And I thought it would be great to hear people who know much more about this than me sort of mull over this. Is there anything you wanted to add, Evangeline?
I was just saying, you gotta love it when Brian posts something and kind of says, discuss. It sort of backs out of the room. And
I'll just sort of drop this and run away.
Go away. I know.
All right. So September, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, because this is actually your first time on the pod, and maybe a little bit more about your expertise in this area.
Well, I generally I summarize what I write as the intersection between Christian spirituality and popular culture as generally the core of my passion on what I do and where my heart is really rooted in and how I want to connect to people and help people learn how to process the world around them. I work for a Christian fiction publisher, and they're a little baby publishing house, but it has definitely been an adventure and a journey, because I started to work for that publishing house around probably just a couple months before I really realized that my church that I had been going to was actually very controlling and manipulative of women specifically. So it was an interesting dynamic between learning to come out of this background while also learning to publish or market Christian romance, and also learning more and more where I stand as a woman in Christian culture and what I am looking for as a Christian woman in my growth. That is kind of the angle where I will be coming from, just because at the core of my heart, I desire to see people grow through asking questions and knowing that their deepest heart aches and even their darkest questions and their shames I don't want anybody to believe that they are too dark to be reached and too dark to be redeemed. And it is that whole area, specifically in a lot of evangelical Christian art or guidance articles that I find, is very one-dimensional for women. So it's something that I've been only peripherally involved in. But my heart is still at the core looking for ways for women to find community. I guess that's the best I can do.
That's really helpful. Great. And I think it sort of underscores one of the first points I think it'd be good to make. And that is, this genre is really important to a lot of people, especially a lot of women. And I think that sort of leads to the first very basic question, because again, I'll confess my inexcusable ignorance a lot here. But so first basic question, we've been calling it like Christian living, Christian inspirational, which I feel like they're kind of clunky terms that don't really capture this. I feel like this is one of those genres where you sort of know it when you see it, but it's very hard to articulate it. So this is sort of open to the floor. Maybe let's start with you, Evangeline, because I'll put you on the spot. Why not? How would you define this genre that we're talking about here? What are the parameters of it?
I was hoping we were going to start with Danielle.
Oh, I'm fine with you going first. You go ahead.
Oh my gosh, it's so hard for me to separate the idea of this Christian living, this women's inspiration, self-help, which is a huge market. And, it's not for me, so I'm not going to go, down that road. I don't know a whole lot about self-help, but it kind of, I feel like whenever I see one of these books that I'm being shown as self-help, if you, follow these steps and, and do these things, then you will be acceptable and your life will be turned around and everything will be fine. And everything in me, in my Enneagram 4-ness, revolts against that. If you say you must do this, I will say, no, I must not, and go the opposite direction. So that makes it really hard for me. That being said, obviously there are women, and I have read some of this. I'm not saying that I haven't. There's extremely beneficial things out there, and we've talked about, and the article that we're talking about mentions that women really are the driving force in the Christian publishing market. They are buying the books. And so this is, scratching an itch. I worry that it's, only exacerbating a deeper problem in some ways, and would love to kind of get to a deeper understanding of what it is that women are wanting and what it is that they bring to a book that they're reading that's supposed to help them in some way. And I think at the end of the article, the author does kind of get there. So I'm excited to talk about that, but I'll let Danielle talk about what you think what are we talking about?
Yes. So it's funny that you mention your distaste for books that give you, 21 days to a better prayer life, because I feel like for my personality, like that is what I want. You tell me what to do and I'm going to execute on the plan you gave me. And what I have found as I've matured and as my tastes have changed is that's kind of rotting out my insides a little bit and keeping me from doing the hard work of actually like wrestling with God about things that are hard, wrestling with my own sin, about ways that I view God that actually don't match up with who he's revealed himself to be in scripture. Because I think the thing that I've learned is that I don't need the 21 steps. I don't need the rah, you're good enough, sister. What I need is to be made entirely new. And I feel like the books in this genre, the best ones I've read, are continually guiding me back to beholding Christ and his goodness and his truth and his beauty. And I think there are some out there that have heard women saying like, I need something more than just prescriptive methods. Like I want something deeper. And they've heard that. And I feel like there's some great things that would be considered in this genre, but there are still some things that I would not consider to be theologically sound. It's thoughts coming from someone who's been given a megaphone. And so I think because you can find both things in something that's given one genre term, it can be a little confusing to navigate these waters, and can be easy to maybe believe that anything in it must be trustworthy, or to maybe cynically believe that everything in it must be fluff. And it's hard to know. Right. It is hard to know.
Yeah, and I thought in what you both said that I want to touch on a little bit more depth later. But September, what do you think when you're approaching this genre? How would you define it? What do you think about it? Very, very broad strokes.
So to give a little bit more of my background, I am 27 years old and I am a single woman. And I've actually avoided the Christian living genre for the most part, because I've noticed so much of it is separated out by categories of a supposed role. So anytime I would go to a Bible study or a book study or something with other women for issues and struggles that are a little bit more particular to women, it would revolve around, here is how you become a better Christian in relation to a spouse, or in relation to becoming a parent. And for me, that has always felt very alienating. So when I think about Christian living, as Danielle had mentioned, I tend to struggle a little more on the side of assuming everything in a Christian living book is fluff, and that it's not going to be relevant to me. And it's going to be something that is just telling me why I'm broken and I'm not fitting the mold of being a good Christian. And that's been something that I've been actively trying to work past too for the last 5 years. And I used to define Christian living, to be really blunt, I view it as a book telling me what to do to be a good person. And I am naturally kind of a rebel. And so I see that in a book and I think, I don't care what you think I should do to be a good person.
Convincing kinship.
And so I had a fight with a pastor one time. He was like, here's a book to help you grow. And I said, like, why should I trust this book? I don't care what it has to say. And I was the thorn in his side for like 3 months.
Go September.
So I tend to view Christian living with a lot of skepticism, because anything that I want it to be driving me back to the Bible. And I find that for women specifically, so often stuff that I see just sitting on the shelves feels like it is being directed to putting me in a mold of a very boring God. And it's like, but God is so creative and I don't understand any of this. And for a couple years, I remember I would have this existential crisis to my mother. I want to get involved in the church, but all that they tell me is to take care of the kid and bring food for a potluck, and I can't cook and kids scare me. And so that's kind of, I don't know if that even answers the question, but that's just like another, how as a late 20s single woman, I view the Christian living genre and how I have responded to it and how it has interacted with my life. And I've kind of come into little conflicts and battles with it that confuse people. And they're like, why is this a problem? It's a book. It's not judging you. I'm like, yes, it is.
So it feels like, there's a lot of common ground here, and that we're seeing roles being presented that are maybe not, that don't fit us, but also beneath that, there's a huge hunger in women for something meaningful, for really and truly learning our identity in the faith and in Christ. And that is so much bigger than the roles that have been prescribed by the Christian living that has been present for the last, several decades.
Yeah, I think so. I found all three of your answers really interesting. I definitely want to tap, especially what you're saying, Evangeline, with like this underlying hunger that we're looking at in the market. One of the things that really I've just been trying to work it out in my mind. So I've been thinking through this is why is this market so dominated by women? Because like any of us who are at all involved with publishing know that women read more than men. They're the primary book buyers in almost every genre. So there's that. But it seems to be ratcheted up even more in this genre. I was thinking almost without exception, all the books in this genre are written explicitly or implicitly, mostly explicitly, by women for women. Why is that?
Wow, that's hard. I really want to hear your answers, Evangeline, in September. Why is that? Well, I think on one hand, some women certainly can have a legitimate, specific calling to minister to other women, and I don't want to downplay that. So, yeah, that's one reason that some women write specifically to and for women. But I do feel that in certain circles of evangelicalism, that has sort of been where women have been pigeonholed a bit in their gifts. Like women can teach women can teach children with authority. And then from there, the waters start to get a little bit muddied. So I think this has been the condition for a while. Churches and denominations, of course, like have reasons for the way that they do things. And I'm not trying to pick on or insult any one group of people, but I mean, that is the primary audience that women with teaching, writing, giftings have been presented. And so here we still are operating in that circle, even so.
I think women are coming into their own in this point in time and in our culture as teachers, as speakers, as bigger identities than what it has been for thousands of years. And so it doesn't really surprise me that we are having this extended conversation that, started with the suffragettes, maybe even further back,
further
back, right? Like, what can we do? And
Julian and Norwich, maybe. Yeah.
Right. Christine Pizan. Yeah. We are coming into our power, really, and trying to figure out how to do the things that we feel called to do and do them well and wrestle with the things that we have to wrestle with. And so it doesn't surprise me that this is a very complex conversation that many women are speaking to and writing to, and many women are reading about and processing.
Yeah, so I'll sort of add really briefly there. I'm just trying to figure out my sort of, I don't know, some of this, I want to say it's like me just being like this, ignorant, chauvinist, whatever, privileged, throw whatever terms you want. It's probably fair.
You are not that. I'm married to you, and I know you're not for a fact.
So I'm just trying to think of my reaction to the genre, and I'll just say these are my knee-jerk reactions. They're not the results of reflection. Forgive me in advance. I consider, when I was a kid, I consider these the sort of books my mom read. There's like Kay Arthur, I think, was a woman who wrote that sort of thing.
She was indeed a woman.
Okay, I'm right. And then coming up, I was generally aware of Beth Moore, so I knew these people existed, and it never occurred to me to read them. And part of that could be my fault, but part of it could be like the publishers didn't care if I read them. Like I was not their target demographic, and they were for women, by women. And I think what you said, Danielle, is very true. It's like the women who have these gifts for teaching, for maybe biblical exposition, it wasn't assumed that they could teach men and women. It was like you're sort of shuffled to just teach the women, whereas the men could teach the men and the women. And this really came to a forefront for me with Beth Moore. Because like I said, I've known about her for years. I was like, oh yeah, she's like a women's author or whatever. But seeing her recently, like I think I follow her on Twitter, and I was like, wow, she's a really gifted teacher. She knows a lot about the Bible. I really appreciate what she's doing to like take on the evangelical establishment or whatever. It's like, wow, this is a really admirable person. Why am I not reading her? And big part of it is her publishers didn't care if I read her or not because I wasn't the target demographic.
Mm-hmm.
So now that I've stepped on and off my soapbox this September, what do you think about why women dominate the genre so much?
I think that it could be very possible that traditionally much of evangelical Christianity has taught that women are not allowed to teach men, but women crave to learn more and they crave to grow and they crave that ever broadening horizon of wisdom and knowledge and to really get the meat and the grit. But when sometimes they get pushed aside. So women are trying to find any scrap of this wisdom and this meat and this hope and these breakthroughs for their own value and how they can fill that hurt place inside that has put them at the fringes of the church for so long. And as soon as they find the smallest little grain of, wait, this means that I mean more than I thought I did. And then they write books because they want to share it with other women. And women buy it from women because, okay, they'll understand more. And I think even if it's not a conscious thing, there is a lot of heartache in the church community. And it's almost scandalous in some church communities. And I'm not saying this is for everybody. I come from a really legalistic church background, and it's only been like the last 4 or 5 years that I'm starting to find my own healthy footing in a spiritual community. So please know that this isn't intended to shame anybody in any way, shape, or form. But it is almost scandalous in many evangelical Christian communities to really point out just how much Jesus loved and respected women as equal members of society and of his church. And it is a beautiful thing, but it took me years and it took people to specifically direct me to that in the Bible for it to click, because I had just been so conditioned to read past it. So I do believe that women crave community and they crave understanding and they crave to be treated as full people who can problem solve much more complex topics, who have diverse interests, who can teach more, who can have an insight that maybe a man doesn't. And not because she's a woman and he's a man, but because she as a person might have a gift that another man doesn't. It's a one person to another person thing, not a man versus woman thing.
You touched on something there that I think would be really helpful to unpack a little bit more, is that sort of desire for community. That is something, again, as an observer from the distance, I've noticed with a lot of popular, Christian living authors. Like they're really great at, social media. They're great at Twitter, Instagram. They're really great at like creating this sort of community of like, it all seems like they're trying to create this like community of people who are like gathering around for tea and to find out what's going on in their lives. And again, it's always dangerous to cast like broad assumptions like women want X, men want Y. But that seems to be a desire that women in general would have more than men. And that I can say like as a dude, if some guy's like, hey, fellow man, you want to come and we can share about our lives and you can read my book about how to be a better Christian? Like, yeah, no thanks. It's okay. Why don't we just watch the game and not talk to each other?
They'd probably decline that too if they said it like that, to be fair.
Hello, fellow man.
Fellow man.
So, Evangeline, your thoughts?
Oh, that's so funny. So I was telling my brother I was going to do this podcast, and he sent me this article about this bookstore called Indigo that is in Canada and that is trying to branch out into North America. or North America. Canada's in North America. Brief geography lesson. Into the States.
I'd like to apologize to Tara and all of our many Canadian friends.
I'm so sorry. Anyway, so he sends me this article, and it's about this bookstore that also has fuzzy reading socks, and it has the pillows, and it has all of the lifestyle things, and it has lots of books. I mean, it's not just, pillows and stuff with a few books. It's books, but it's also that lifestyle, which kind of, ties into the article a bit, and that curated authenticity, which was a term that the author used that made me grit my teeth a bit. It's hard. It is a really hard term. And so what we're talking about is that perfect Instagram lifestyle. Right. And it's not, of course, just authors. It's not just inspirational authors. Yeah. It's influencers. I don't have to tell you. You can go on Instagram and you'll see it. And oh my gosh, it's damaging. Oh my gosh, it's hard as a woman to live with those expectations. And so my brother was like, I can't believe that that women want to go to this store, because if you showed me this store, it would be the last place that I wanted to go. And maybe Matt, maybe you agree.
I was having similar thoughts.
No way.
Why don't you just give me this kiosk in the corner of a bookstore and I can read by myself, okay? Right. That's my idea.
Or better yet, stick with the ebook method and just I don't have to leave my house.
Ooh, even better.
But there's something in women, I think, that we are so drawn to beauty. And that is a good thing. But then it becomes a comparison thing, and it becomes a poison, right? Danielle's nodding. So
I'm with you, girl. I'm giving you the keep going nod.
Okay. Well, it's been something that I've been wrestling with personally, because I am an author. I do need to be on social media, and I don't want to put up, ugly pictures. I do sometimes, because I'm like, people should know what I look like after I've tried to meet a deadline and failed. But you want to put your best foot forward, and that's not such a bad thing. But when everyone's comparing themselves and nobody's measuring up, then we have a problem.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important issue to touch on, and I think it's sort of a next major topic I'd like to touch, because one of the areas of male privilege that is not touched upon is when I see somebody who's Instagramming their perfect life, I just think, okay, whatever, and I just move on.
That's nice for you.
Yes. But that is one of the issues where it's a big issue, and I think it's kind of dangerous to go either it's all good or all bad, because it seems like, especially the past few years, the people who have the biggest platforms, the loudest microphones, seem to be the ones who are the best at social media. So what's her name? Rachel Hollis?
Yeah.
She seems to have garnered her platform primarily because she's super good at Instagram and creating Instagrammable quotes with perfect pictures. And like you said, it's not just the Christian living genre, it's all across society. But how should we view the fact that the people who are the most influential in this area increasingly are the ones who are the best at social media?
Yeah, that's a toughie. As I was kind of preparing to have this conversation, I read an article by Tish Harrison Warren on Christianity Today. She's an ordained Anglican priest and an author as well. The name of the article, if you want to look it up, is Who's in Charge of the Christian Blogosphere? Which I just think is a great question.
Who's in charge? Let me speak to your manager.
We have a blogosphere pope. Can we do that? That would really come in handy.
Who is in charge here? And, I think because in the local church, there are few leaders who are like the women in the local church, because, well, in some context, few of them are women. It kind of creates this discipleship vacuum. And as she explains in the article, okay, enter female authors with Instagram given authority, sometimes for better and sometimes for worse. There's some great Instagram follows out there, and there's some that are potentially damaging. And I think the interesting thing about this situation that the article kind of goes on to discuss is people are consuming these Christian living personas on Instagram and the books that they write, but it's untethered from the authority and accountability of the local church. And that can be potentially damaging, not always, but potentially. So you get issues of by whose authority are they speaking and who do they answer to for what they teach? And that creates an environment where the person with the loudest megaphone wins. And so even though there's this hunger for truth, and it seems like women have kind of found a corner of the web to make their voices and thoughts and ideas heard, there's a risk of us not consuming truth from these people because there's just not that rooting that there's meant to be, because women aren't given a lot of opportunities under the authority and accountability of the church and of the scriptures to use their giftings.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's untethered from reality too.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, we all know that what we're presenting on social media is not the full picture.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question is, how do we present the full picture? How do we actually be authentic rather than curating our authenticity?
Yes.
How do we actually be vulnerable? But then also at the same time, you don't need to put every bad thing.
Air all your
those people too.
dirty laundry.
Their dirty laundry to every bad thing. You don't need to be doing
Here's
that.
me after
either.
I vomited with a bad case of the flu.
Exactly. So where's the line? And I think that's probably personal for every person putting their stuff out on Instagram, and it's also personal for who how you are taking that in. I mean, I know that there are some days when I cannot be on Instagram because I'm not in an emotional place to be responsible with my intake. And, in other words, I'm going to get jealous. I'm going to get, down on myself because I don't look like this person and I don't have what this person has or whatever. And that's on me, so I need to say, okay, cut it off and I'm going to live my actual life. And then there are other times when I'm, in a good place. I'm like, oh, I can go and celebrate with my author friends that they got a contract,
Right.
Genuinely I can. And so that's kind of, you have to monitor your own emotional state.
Totally.
Yeah. So September, I'm kind of interested to see what your thoughts would be, especially with the work you do sort of in the publishing realm. Like, what are your thoughts of the fact that it seems that the most influential voices are the best Instagrammers?
I think, so I'll back up a little bit and say that how I instruct my authors first and foremost is to decide on their boundaries first and then decide on how much they share. And figure out where you're comfortable and what you want to share, what you don't want to share, and then start to build your brand from that perspective. I think that, it seems like the people who are the most influential are the biggest names on Twitter. Like Twitter, I follow a bunch of podcasters on Twitter. That's where they seem to hang out. The book people seem to hang out on Instagram. It seems to be like everyone sort of acknowledges Facebook still exists, even though they get annoyed that they have to acknowledge it exists because nobody really cares. And but I have noticed, at least on a smaller scale, like I'm not talking super high name celebrities. I'm just going to say with my authors. The my authors who have been getting more successful, they are the ones that are good at social media, but they're the ones that are good at social media after they decided how much to share and what part of them they wanted to safely be authentic about. And I think so often it is shown as a polarizing either or. You have to share everything or else people won't get to know you and then you're sunk forever and your name is never going to get out there. And then you hear on the other side, but if you're not careful, you're going to get stalkers and all of these horrible things. And I have authors who have actually had issues with stalkers. So I had to work with her and say, okay, how are we going to reevaluate your publicity plan to respect your privacy and safety and that of your family? I have another author who doesn't share almost anything personal except about her writing life, and she's successful because she does that consistently and has gathered people who are interested in the gentleness of her writing, the gentleness of her care for other people, and she just has this, I just don't even know another word to describe her other than a very gentle spirit. So I do think when it comes to the loudest voices, it boils a lot down to conviction and confidence, I've found. And it's something that with my authors, I have to work with some of them a lot, because a lot of them are timid writers. They don't want to be sharing anything. They're like, I don't want to. I'm like, well, that's too bad. So I come from the other angle of, okay, why did you decide to write this book? You sat down and toiled through tens of thousands of words to piece something together. Then you went through an editor. Then you queried people and you got the book contracted. And then you had to go through more edits with the publisher. And then they told you this is wrong. And it's just, it's a nightmare. I could never do that. I don't know how you do it, Evangeline. I'm like, I would rather sit here and just write rejection letters instead. And it's like, there has to be something in there that is special to you. And unfortunately, our culture right now prioritizes rashness, loudness, and aggressiveness. And they equate aggressive shock factor to strength instead. And so those who are very strong, and they're strong in grace and mercy, and they're confident in that, they're harder and harder to find, because these traits are not being validated in the church. They're not being validated in secular culture. They're just shown as these nice little things in the corner. And it's very rare now that we hear people being validated for the true hardcore resilience it takes to be kind. So I think that it is slowly happening. There are women who are stepping up and are making the decisions more and more to find that core and that seed of what God has instructed them to teach on or to share on, what essence they have been led to give to the world, and their voices are getting bolder. But it is still very early on in that process that the women, specifically, I guess, for this conversation, are being empowered to be bold with kindness and grace, and to be seen for things that are beautiful in a raw, authentic way without it being bitter. So I know I'm babbling a lot here. It's just like my brain goes off on all these little different ways on, well, this feeds into this, and this feeds into this. And, and it's just, it's so messy because everyone is so different. The loudest voice, unfortunately, is usually either a publicly and a culturally endorsed voice or an aggressive. And so there is, like the article saying, there is that quiet revolution of women who want more authenticity, and their voices are getting louder. But I think we're still very early in a transitional phase where women are starting to figure out what that is even looking like.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the quiet revolution, because that was one of the aspects I think we should close on. And the article, once again, that sort of sparked this talk is in LitHub. It's called The Quiet Revolution in Evangelical Christian Publishing by Catherine Watson. And it seems like one of her core arguments is that there's a developing shift in the way the genre works. To give you one example. I remember encountering this book in my grandma's house. I forget who wrote it, but the title of the book was Stick a Geranium in Your Hat and Be Happy.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, help me.
Yes.
So
I think that was in my grandmother's house as well.
There we go. There we go. So I've never read the book. I can't judge it, but it did seem to be a certain like, hey, let's smile. Let's be happy. We can all get through this together. Whereas now, one of the authors that the Lit Hub article brings up is Alia Joy. She wrote a book called, let me scroll through this because I'm a prepared podcast host and had it right at my fingertips.
Glorious Weakness.
Glorious Weakness, which the article says is essays that charts the difficulties of grief, poverty, and living as a Christian woman with a mental health condition. So very far away from stick a geranium in your hat and be happy. So a couple, again, closing questions here. Is this a shift that you all have been noticing in the market? And if so, do you think it's feasible that this shift would be, feasible?
Is it feasible that it would be feasible?
Is it feasible to be feasible?
Great question.
Thank you.
I do think it's feasible. I think the demand is there. And I think we as believers, as readers, as women readers who are believers, we need to be expecting more of the authors in this genre, both male and female, whether they write for men or write for women. I think we should have an expectation that their writing be relevant and beautiful and skillful and compelling, and that the authors be embracing theological study, that they're really rigorously studying what they are writing about, and that they are willing to submit themselves to the authority of the church to work this out in community with other believers, with other artists. I think the desire is there, but perhaps we're not insisting on it enough by still consuming work that doesn't reflect the richness that we desire as readers, that doesn't lead us to that more soulful place of growing in Christ.
Yeah, I think there's the hunger for the depth there. I think it's huge. And we've been offered the 20 steps to fixing your life and making yourself better. And we want to be better as women. Almost all the women I know, I can't really even say or think of one who's like, I'm good. We want so badly to be fully embodied and fully using our gifts and pursuing our calling and everything to the best of our ability. And so we're tempted to fall into the 20 steps, into the how can I make myself acceptable. And that is poisonous, and it's not something that we can do. Yeah. And so to see books come along that walk in the deep places, in the hard places, don't cover up with fake beauty what is, tremendously painful. Mm-hmm. I think that those voices, those authors, their voices will grow stronger. I think that we have seen them grow stronger. And, as we become more inclusive and less afraid to face the hard stuff and walk with our sisters, that movement, I hope, please God, that movement will replace the make yourself presentable so that you can come to the table. Right. I would be remiss if I didn't bring up Rachel Held Evans and her amazing extension of grace and invitation of all to the table. And that is, I think, an amazing legacy to continue to walk in. How can we bring everyone to the table? How can we accept and love and go deeper rather than make ourselves, quote unquote, worthy of being in any space? Yeah. September, I'll give you the last word here.
And I want to go off a little bit of what Evangeline said too. With the passing of Rachel Held Evans, I believe that the women who have been quietly having their spirits fed by women like Rachel Held Evans, Sarah Bessey, they're going to become more vigorous. I should say we are going to become more vigorous in demanding there to be discussion, not silence. And I think that there is going to be more people who are stepping up and fighting for the right to have questions and not just to be told to, oh, just accept this because it's right. Well, why? Because the passing of Rachel Held Evans, there is a vacuum that was instantly felt by many women. And there is going to be, I really do believe that there's going to be an increase in the demand for backing up claims scripturally and really seeking the commonality of every person's integral creativity and value as creation in the image of God.
Yeah, so one thing that is becoming very clear to me is that this is a big conversation that will have to keep going. So I can almost guarantee you that there will be multiple iterations of this conversation over the pod in the coming months. But thank you so much to you three for kicking this off, bringing this up, and helping to educate even the ignorant like me. Really appreciate it. And now, as always, take the podcast home with a quotation from St. Anselm. Lord, give me what you have made me want. I praise and thank you for the desire that you have inspired. Perfect what you have begun and grant me what you have made me long for. Till next time, everybody.